Thank you, everyone, for your interest in the Interfaces graduate training program. Dr. Rangamani and Kelly and I are here today to tell you a little bit about the program and how you can apply to join it and what the opportunities are to get support as well from this graduate training program. But the most important thing for you to understand is that uh, the program we're describing is an interdisciplinary PhD specialization. Its theme is multi-scale biology. And so that's its official name, the Interdisciplinary PhD Specialization in Multi-Scale Biology. And we do have an NIH training grant from the National Institute for Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, but only students who are in the interdisciplinary specialization are eligible to apply for and be supported on that training grant. So before we talk about the training grant, I want to talk about the specialization. So the name interfaces is just a nickname. It comes from the name of the program that was started by Howard Hughes Medical Institutes that funded the sort of startup of this program now 20 years ago. But its real name, as I mentioned, is the Interdisciplinary Graduate Training Program in the Interdisciplinary PhD Specialization in Multi-Scale Biology. And it's an interdisciplinary program that includes graduate students from graduate programs in the biological, health, physical, and engineering sciences. As I mentioned, it's been going now for 20 years. In 2006, we were one of 10 institutes to receive a Howard Hughes Medical Institute grant to Interfaces grant to fund this, to start this program. And then in 2009, we officially became an interdisciplinary PhD specialization. And what that means is that as a student of one of the 10 participating graduate programs in the specialization, if you join the specialization, then when you meet the requirements of the specialization, then when you graduate with your PhD, you graduate with a specialization, so in parentheses, in multi-scale biology. So you'll earn your PhD in neurosciences or bioengineering or biomedical sciences or biological sciences with a specialization in multi-scale biology. So it's an official degree specialization within the PhD degrees of the participating programs. And the key idea that the Howard Hughes Medical Institutes wanted to foster was the idea of genuinely interdisciplinary training and collaboration, which is why it's so important that we have students from so many different graduate programs in this program. That's the point. So the fact that we have so many participating graduate programs is in fact the single most important feature and strength of this program, because the program is designed to expose you to and to teach you PhD students, how research is done in a genuinely interdisciplinary way. Now, this isn't a new idea at UC San Diego, but even 20 years ago when we wrote this proposal, it wasn't a new idea, but we realized that, interdisciplinarity is a moving target and we have to stay ahead of the curve. And I think in the last 20 years, UCSD has been very good at not only being a pioneer in interdisciplinary science, but in pushing forward the boundaries. And many of the students who've graduated from this program have gone on to be interdisciplinary scientists themselves. And the theme is multi-scale biology, which means that we're interested in problems that span scales of biological organization, from molecules to organisms or populations. And that, of course, doesn't rule out much in biological science. But the other aspect of this program is that we realized that in order to do a multi-scale science, you needed technologies that could probe and analyze biological structure and function at multiple different scales. And so the key feature, defining feature of this graduate training specialization is that its curriculum is all hands-on and technology-centered. So we have a series of courses, not all of them which you have to take, but some of which you will have to take if you're a member of the specialization. And all these courses are hands-on, lab-based courses that introduce technologies either at different scales of biological organization. So, for example, we have courses in mass spectrometry all the way through to courses in whole body magnetic resonance imaging, or technologies that span scales. For example, Dr. Rangamani and I at the moment this quarter are teaching a course on numerical analysis for multiscale biology, where students get hands-on experience with tools ranging from molecular dynamics for atomistic scale simulations all the way to finite element models and systems models of whole body biology. And out of our curriculum, students take at least 3 of these courses, and one of them has to be our applied course on data science for multiscale biology. That's because this course is not only so valuable for all students, but also because it helps to serve and satisfy some of the rigor and reproducibility requirements that NIH has. Students also attend bi-weekly seminars, annual symposium and retreat. We have open houses for our courses. So the quarter before you enroll for the course, you can meet the instructors and learn exactly what we do, so that to help you decide which course you would want to enroll in. We have quarterly program meetings, and each student in the program is asked to be a graduate student instructor for one of the lab courses in the program itself after you've taken it yourself. So these are the 10 graduate programs that currently participate in the specialization. So you'll see that this is very broad and interdisciplinary and includes health sciences, physical sciences, biological sciences, and engineering. But there are a few graduate programs here in biomedical sciences that are not represented, particularly BISB, bioinformatics and systems biology, and computer science. So if you are a graduate student in one of the participating graduate programs that's not on this list, at least in one of the graduate programs that's not on this list, then as of today, you're not actually eligible to join the specialization. However, there is a little bit of a wiggle room here. And that's that although you apply for the specialization this quarter, and we normally make decisions, and normally that's for most of you will be the end of the first year of the PhD, and we make admission decisions and announce them during the summer. Technically, you're not part of the specialization from the university's point of view until you advance to candidacy. So they don't actually change your academic record to list you as a specialization student until you advance to candidacy. And so in the past, that has given us a little bit of room to see if graduate programs would be willing to join. And so, for example, there was a time when material science wasn't part of specialization, but some students came along, they applied for the specialization. We said, well, technically we can't admit you to the specialization, but you can participate in the activities, and we can see if your graduate program would be willing to join the specialization, and material science did. So if you are not from one of these participating graduate programs, then but you would really like to participate, then let us know and we'll see if your graduate program might be interested in joining. That said, I don't think there's much interest from BISV or computer science in joining the degree specialization, because it does require their students to do additional coursework. So what are the aims of this program? Well, so the high-level aims are to train a new generation of cross-disciplinary science who has been actively engaged in dual-mentored life science research at the interfaces between different scientific disciplines, using a well-structured collaboration between graduate programs. And this is important. The dual mentorship is the single most important part of this. So a lot of training programs like this are dual mentored, and sometimes there's a sort of a primary mentor and a secondary mentor. But we really want both co-mentors to be bona fide, participants in your research training. And so the sort of depth of the co-mentored plan that you have will be an important criterion in sort of deciding admission to the program. As I mentioned, we also want to provide state-of-the-art training in specialized research technologies through our hands-on laboratory curriculum, exposing graduate students to instruction using technologies that they ordinarily would only get access to through perhaps a research collaboration. They would normally not have the opportunity to take a course on MRI or mass spectrometry where they actually did lab work. And we do this by having the specialization. We can offer these courses and then give priority to specialization students so that the courses don't get too large. And then we have this specific and unique educational focus on integrative quantitative analysis across scales of biological organization, from molecule to organism in health and disease. And this is broad, but it's important in your application and in your considering whether this program is right for you, that you think about how your research plan fits this multi-scale theme. So who can apply? So generally, students apply for admission to the specialization in the spring of the first year of the PhD. But if you are a second or third year PhD student, you can still apply, because as I said, you don't formally become a member of the specialization until you advance to candidacy. That said, because there are course requirements, if you're already in your third year, you may not want to be applying for a program that requires you to take additional courses at this stage of your degree. That's why we limit admission to students before they advance to candidacy. You don't actually complete the program requirements and formally advance to candidacy until after into the specialization until after you advance to candidacy, as I mentioned. And as I also mentioned, the students take 3 of our courses and have dual mentors, and one of the courses should be data science for multiscale biology. So the dual mentorship means that you have 2 mentors, and in the past this just meant interdisciplinary co-mentors, so one mentor from one discipline and one from another. But honestly, we have been so successful in becoming interdisciplinary at UCSD that now our own departments and graduate programs are themselves very interdisciplinary, and so we can have 2 faculty mentors from the same graduate program with very, very different disciplinary backgrounds and expertise. So we feel that that's a little bit of an artificial, and similarly, we could have 2 faculty members from very different graduate programs that had very similar training. So we've sort of in the last few years, in the current iteration of this of our training grant, we changed the definition of the co-mentors such that one should be considered as the domain science mentor and the other as the technology co-mentor. Now, that doesn't preclude, again, the possibility that both mentors are experts in the domain science and both are experts in relevant technologies. But the key here is that the best person to advise you on a project involving cancer or cardiovascular disease might not also be the best person to advise you on the use of MRI or molecular dynamics for that. So, so the idea is to use this co-mentorship structure to bring together different types of expertise in your research training, and to make you think about that in terms of who's an expert in the domain science and the multi-scale problem, and who's an expert in at least one critical technology that I need to explore, to do this research. If you want to find out who eligible co-mentors are, you can go to the Interfaces website, interfaces.ucsd.edu, and you can see all the faculty who are part of the specialization. by graduate program. Not all of and anyone who is a specialization faculty member can be your mentor or co-mentor. If you have a mentor or co-mentor who's not a specialization faculty member, we can add them fairly easily if they agree and they want to be part of the specialization. However, we are also going to talk about the NIH T32, the training grant that students admitted to the specialization are eligible to apply for. And that's why on the website you can see there's a faculty role menu item here where you can choose training grant faculty. So not all of the specialization faculty are also named on the training grant. And that's for two practical reasons. One is the NIH limits the number of training faculty that we can have on the training grant to about 40. So there are more specialization faculty than 40. And the second is we don't change the training faculty every year. We pretty much only change the training faculty every 5 years when we renew the training grant. Each year when we do our updates, if one faculty member retires or leaves, we can occasionally replace them, but the faculty or training grant program faculty are a subset of those who are listed on the specialization. And this is not important for your admission to the specialization, but it is a consideration for support on the training grant. But maybe I'll just stop there and see if I made that clear, if there are any questions about that. So sort of key takeaways, you need interdisciplinary co-mentors. You need to identify them and have them commit to being a bona fide part of your research training. And you should be able to define one of them as a domain science expert and at least one as a technology expert. And that's a criterion for admission to the specialization. If you want to apply for the training grant, then those two faculty members should be listed on the training grant itself. And so they're a subset. Occasionally, well, not so infrequently, we have students who have one co-mentor who's named on the training grant and another who isn't. And what we can sometimes do is help you find essentially a third co-mentor. We don't want to, break any co-mentorship arrangements. The more co-mentors, the better. But what we could do is we could help you find a second co-mentor who was on the training grant who would fit the criteria so that you could both be eligible for the training grant and for the specialization. I mentioned our courses, our lab-based courses, and these are the courses here, and you can see that they span different scales. So we have one on supramolecular structure determination, which is a mass spec course, one on microscopy, molecular imaging and quantitation in living cells, one on medical imaging using MRI, one on tissue engineering. And because we have a lot of the projects in the program to do with neuroscience, we have a couple of Dr. Cowenberg's offers a couple of neuroscience courses or neurodynamics courses that span scales. And then we also have Ben Kim Math Farm 276, numerical analysis for multi-scale biology that I mentioned, that spans multiple scale, that introduces modeling methods across multiple scales of biological organization, and data science for multi-scale biology, which is a data science course, but focused on the kind of data and the kind of questions that students in the interfaces program are interested in their research. As I mentioned, in addition to the curriculum and the teaching requirement, we have events, and we don't have so many events that it becomes a burden, but we have them regularly so that you really feel part of a cohort and you get to interact regularly, not just in the classes, but also in a continuing basis through student seminars and mentor lunches every 2 weeks, an annual symposium and retreat, and social events like happy hours. Once every 2 years, the NIBIB also has a training grantees meeting that they host. It was supposed to be this year actually, but they've just cancelled it the other day, so it'll be next year. And so that's an opportunity to travel to Bethesda and hear about, how NIH works. So most of that is about the specialization. And again, this admission to the specialization is a prerequisite for support on the training grant. And most of the students who are admitted to the specialization won't be supported on the training grant because we only have 2 or 3 slots each year available on the training grant to support students with. So if you're admitted to the specialization and you can apply at the same time for consideration for support from the training grant. However, there are some limitations on that. You need to be a US citizen or permanent resident, and the support from NIH is ordinarily the support is for students currently in their first year for the second and third years of their degree. Occasionally, we'll support a student for 1 year, and this happens particularly when the grant comes to the end of its cycle and we can't be sure that it'll be renewed, and so until it's renewed, there may only be 1 year of support. So ordinarily, we will give priority to students who will be joining the second year next year, but we will also consider students who will be starting their third year. We also have a San Diego Fellowship match, so we can that can give us another slot that we can use. You need to take, as part of being on the, you need to satisfy all of the criteria for the interdisciplinary specialization in order to be on the training grant. And so I don't really need to repeat all of those, the coursework and the co-mentorship. The important distinction is that the co-mentors should come from the training grant faculty, not just from the specialization faculty. And you can filter them on the website. And there is another somewhat specific requirement that is imposed upon us by the Institute, which is they're going to take your research description and run it through a tool called NIH Matchmaker. Now, NIH Matchmaker is not some fancy AI tool. It's some very crude tool that basically counts words, and it classifies documents, scientific abstracts and so forth, according to how well they match other documents or other grants in particular that have been funded by the different institutes and centers at NIH. And so when you take an abstract and you plug it into NIH Matchmaker, which you can find online, it'll give you a ranking. And for example, if your project is about cancer, almost certainly the National Cancer Institute will come up as #1. For rather specific reasons, the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering will do this with your proposal, and it will not support trainees if their project on Matchmaker comes up lower than #3, or at least if NIBIB comes up as lower than #3 match. So we can help you with this, but just for preparing your application and to give you a bit of guidance, the things that you want to emphasize in your project description are the scales and the tools, the technologies, and in particular imaging technologies, which almost everyone in biomedical sciences makes use of at some scale, are very helpful because this is the National Institute for Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. So by emphasizing the technologies and particularly imaging, and emphasize somewhat less the specific scientific questions, it's usually possible for our top applicants to meet this criterion. But this is just something that we would never have imposed ourselves, but we just know that it's something that the Institute does, and so we have no choice but to select trainees whose project description seems to sound like it matches NIBIB better than other institutes. For a long time, this wasn't the case, and I wish it wasn't, but that's just something to keep in mind. So these are really the things you need to know. If you're a US citizen or permanent resident, in particular, if you're a first year student now who belongs to one of the 10 training programs, graduate programs, if you have a mentor and either a co-mentor or a potential co-mentor who are named on our training grant, then not only do we encourage you to apply for admission to the specialization, we encourage you to apply for the training grant as well. You will need to get letters from the co-mentors sort of saying how committed they are to your research training. Here's just a list of those faculty who are on the named on the training grant itself. You can see they come from all of the different participating graduate programs, and so hopefully one of your advisors you will find on that list, and we can certainly help you find another one, or your advisor can. And again, if you already have a co-mentor who isn't on this list but you want to apply for the training grant, there's nothing to stop you having three co-mentors instead of two. So Kelly will post instructions on the web page, I guess tomorrow, if they're not already there, for applying, and you have a couple of weeks to get your application in. I really encourage everyone to apply to join the specialization if this type of thing appeals to you, if the idea of being part of a highly interdisciplinary community, because I can tell you that the biggest success of this program has been getting students from all these different graduate programs together and exchanging ideas, and those exchanges have led to new collaborations between labs and new papers and new discoveries, which is exactly what the Howard Hughes Medical Institute intended to happen 20 years ago. And we can now point to all kinds of success stories of our trainees as a direct result of this. The other thing is you're not only just exchanging ideas in seminars and happy hours and events, but also in lab courses where you're actually doing science together. So this is quite a unique program. There was nothing that guaranteed it would last for 20 years. And yet not only has it lasted 20 years, I think today is the single biggest group of students we've ever talked to about joining this. So it continues to be highly relevant and highly successful, and we would love you to join this group, and we'll certainly do our best to support as many of you as we are eligible and as we can on the training grant. But before you think about the training grant, think about the program. Is the program the sort of thing you want to do? And if it is, please apply. Okay, let me turn off this so you can see better, and just open it up for questions. And I see that Kelly posted a link to Matchmaker in this chat. I don't know if it's in the instructions, Kelly, but if it isn't, you can add that to the instructions on the web page too. So any questions for me or Dr. Rangamani? If you think of any afterwards, you can always email Kelly and she'll either answer them or forward the question to the right person to answer. Padmini, did you want to add anything?
No, I thought you covered everything. I'll be happy to answer any questions. They email us or, yeah.
Again, this is a really special program. It's been amazingly successful. We have this sort of information session, not so much to discourage people, but just to be realistic about what we're trying to do here. But I really don't. Anyone who's really interested in this type of interdisciplinary training experience, it doesn't ask a great deal of you, but it gives you a lot if you're that kind of person. If you like to, cross interdisciplinary barriers and learn how different people are approaching these multi-scale challenges in biology.
If
Yeah.
I can, just to clarify, hi, it's really nice to meet
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for the information. It sounds very exciting. I just wanted to clarify that in order to be eligible to receive support from the training grant, both co-mentors need to be on the training grant. Is that correct?
So I'll put it this way, because the truth is we have supported trainees where both co-mentors weren't on the training grant. So a better way to put it is that we give priority. So to be eligible, you need to be a second or third year student, you need to be a US citizen, and you need to be in the specialization. We give priority to students for whom both co-mentors are members of the training faculty. If one is and one isn't, we've come up with ways of sort of working around that. We don't want this to be an artificial constraint. Um, so
Okay, thank
I
you.
would say
Yeah.
priority is a better word for the co-mentorship. I mean, the same goes for our courses. Like if you've already taken some of our courses, that's a big plus. You're not eligible to apply if you haven't, but if you have, that will yeah, help your application.
Okay, that totally makes sense. And then the other question that I had was just kind of a little bit more like logistical, I guess. I am imagining that with two or three co-mentors, even who are essentially kind of like all serving as a primary mentor, there are going to be some, I guess, like maybe challenges about exactly how a student is working with both teams. And I was wondering if you provide any kinds of support for figuring out what that kind of looks like on the day to day or like week to week.
We do when it's needed, and we also use some of our lunchtime sessions to talk about interdisciplinary training and interdisciplinary science. That said, I could tell you this idea isn't new. I mean, I had interdisciplinary co-mentors, and I won't even tell you how long ago that was. And uh, the faculty who've been chosen, who've joined the specialization, and who are on the training ground, they're very experienced at this. Often the co-mentors are collaborators, and that's great. It's occasionally it's the case that they have not been collaborators before, and the trainee becomes the glue for a new collaboration. And in fact, that's one of the kind of ulterior motives, if you like, of the HHMI and creating this program in the first place, using students as glue to help faculty from different disciplines collaborate. Um, because often, the only thing that's getting in the way uh, of a new collaboration is who's going to do the work, And so if a new student comes along who's willing to work at that interface, then it becomes a great opportunity for a new collaboration. So in reality, this has not been such a problem. I think also, even though we don't use the term primary versus sort of secondary mentor, we do understand that you belong to a graduate program, whether it's chemistry and biochemistry or neuroscience or mechanical and aerospace engineering, and it's probable that one of your mentors is a faculty member in that department or graduate program. And in that sense, they are the primary mentor. They're the person who's has to sign off on support commitments and provide space and those type of things. So we do recognize that there's more often than not, there's a sort of a primary mentor who's from the participating graduate program, and often the co-mentor is not. That said, our new definition doesn't use which graduate program or which department the faculty member comes from as the definition of interdisciplinary. Instead, we use this kind of domain science and technology science. And we don't say that the domain science co-mentor should be the primary mentor, and it just works out how it works out. And it's really just an opportunity for you and your faculty co-mentors to construct a research training plan that, helps you take advantage of their different expertise and their, mutual interest in the problem you're working on.
Thank you for answering that.
Okay. One other thing I didn't mention, but in case there are any master's students here, the specialization and the T32 are for PhD students. So there is no specialization or training grant for master's students. However, some of you are master's students who may be eligible to petition to join the PhD. If that's what you intend to do, but you have not been able to do that or will not have been able to do that before the application deadline, you can still apply. We won't admit you until we've heard that you've been successfully admitted to the PhD program. But there's a bit of a time lag between when you submit your application and when the program really doesn't start for you until the fall. And so during the summer we can sort some of these things out. Okay, then. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you again all for your interest. Thank you, Kelly, for setting this up. And feel free to email any of us after you've had a look at the Interfaces webpage if you have questions about your application.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.